The Batman Arkham Trilogy is now on the Switch, and we are asking the age-old question, and by age-old I mean a couple months old for a video series I started making recently, of is it worth buying? Is it worth owning the Batman Arkham Trilogy on Nintendo Switch? There are some good things, there are some bad things, and I wanted to take a look at it with you here today. When I asked you if you were buying it over on my community tab, I got a very low amount of answers that were actually buying this. But as we've seen in the past, Switch games are incredibly popular, there is a massive install base, and the games do sell well. Something I noticed right away with the Batman Arkham Trilogy is that each game performs very differently. Each one of these, if you had told me they were ported by a different company entirely, and they were not being sold as a package deal, I would believe you, because they just run extremely differently. Part of that has to do with the games already being different, not running in the exact same gameplay style because they were separated by years of development. But part of it also just has to do with the performance that we're seeing now on games that are actually pretty old. The newest game in this franchise, Arkham Knight, is from back in 2015. It is now the end of 2023, 8 years later, and this thing struggles to run some of these games. So before we hop into it further, if you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I will have a couple of little things to tell you at the end of the video as well, but I'm interested in hopping right into this with you because Arkham Asylum is a game that I think on this trilogy runs competently. It's fine. Obviously, if you played this on previous hardware, you're going to have differing opinions on what version you like the best. Something I do like about this version of Arkham Asylum and City is that they are mostly based off of the original versions of the game. That means they are not based off of the graphical remasters of Return to Arkham. Return to Arkham was a mixed bag in and of itself. Some love it, some hate it. I do think it did certain things a little better, but a lot of the textures I thought were actually crisper, but looked worse. What I mean by that is I thought a lot of the times when they were remastering faces on Return to Arkham, they did not look quite as good as they originally did. You can tell a night and day difference between looking at Return to Arkham Catwoman and looking at Catwoman in the original game running on PC. I think it's just unfortunately, if you don't have a PC, that was the easy way to play the Arkham games with modern technology, was the Xbox One and PS4 ports of City and Asylum in Return to Arkham. This is running off of the base versions of those games, not Return to Arkham, but the Xbox 360 PS3 era, and I think it does a pretty good job with Asylum and City. I noticed some chugging in Asylum sometimes when running through the halls of the Asylum especially, it was there. There was frame drops, there were things going on, it's not perfect at all. This cartridge, it's worth noting, only comes with Arkham Asylum on the cart, okay? When you put it in, you're able to then download Arkham City and Knight from the internet. You are only getting Arkham Asylum on the cartridge itself. So if you are a physical games purist, I'm somebody who really loves physical games, unless there's no other option, that's frustrating. Because when you get a cartridge, you kind of wish, or a disc, you kind of wish the whole game was there. It's something we see more and more of, especially with Nintendo Switch carts. One of the big problems is that these cartridges are pretty expensive. My understanding is that Nintendo takes a cut of them, more so than when you have to print something on a Blu-ray disc. So that's going to eat into profits of a game, and because of that, I think a lot of games are not willing to do more than one cartridge. You are just getting Arkham Asylum unless you go on the internet and you download the other two. I did play these games with a patch. Some people were playing them without the day one patch because cartridges went out a day early to some people, and I personally had a really hard time finding one. I had to go to multiple stores to even find a store that carried the Arkham Trilogy, so I think the understanding was just you're gonna buy this digitally because who cares anymore. I do, but most people don't. I think combat is going to be the biggest question for a lot of people when it comes to any game of how is combat impacted by running on the Nintendo Switch. When you're playing in actual docked mode, when you're playing on a big screen, I think it is easier to notice the flaws with the Switch ports of all of these games. When you are playing on the little Switch itself, on the screen in your hands, the flaws are still there, but it's a lot easier to either overlook them or not notice them as frequently. For example, I will show some footage of both. You know, I don't have a capture card in my Switch itself, so I had to actually use a phone camera to record handheld mode, and I only did a little bit of that. But when you are actually fighting people in Asylum, there are some frame drops, but it's nothing that really impacts the performance of playing the game. In terms of when you are trying to counter, when you are trying to punch, I didn't really notice it getting in my way at all. You know that it's there, but it's not really that bad. Running through the halls itself is where I really noticed some frame problems. Ironically, I did not notice them as much when actually out on Arkham Island, which is the opposite problem of some of the other games we're going to take a look at. This is a good way to play through Asylum if you have maybe kids, and I saw some people on Reddit talking about, hey, it's hard for me with my wife or my kids or whatever to go sit down at a gaming PC and play, or it's hard to go, you know, sit down and play a PS5 game or whatever. It's easier for me to sit while my kid's watching Bluey on TV and play on a Switch in handheld mode. If that is what you have access to as a game, I don't think there's anything really wrong with Asylum or City. They're not going to run as stably as we've seen them run in the past, but you're sacrificing that for accessibility, the ability to move the game around, take it to the next room with you, take it on a road trip, things like that. That's what you're sacrificing that for. And I will say that the games do look good when it comes to Asylum and City. Asylum and City, though, have to be split off from Knight. We're gonna get to Knight in just a minute. City, I noticed, was the best running game on this collection, at least from what I can see. I don't, again, have Digital Foundry tech. I did actually watch a interesting tech analysis review of the gameplay from a channel called Switch Up, where they actually do have that kind of stuff, just like Digital Foundry does, where they actually measure the frame rates themselves using software. And the frame rates are not perfect. You know, if you want a look at that, there are other channels that will cover that a little more than me. But something that I noticed as just a normal video game player is that the frame rate was fairly consistent on Arkham City. When you're indoors and outdoors, it's mostly fine. When I played Batman Return to Arkham on the base model PS4, not the PS4 Pro, not the PS5 now, the base model PS4, I found it to be very lacking in frame rate when it came to Arkham City. Playing Arkham Asylum, it was fine. It lacked some of the color choices that I really liked from the original. Some of the lighting was different, and I actually think that changed some of the charm. But it ran fine for Asylum. When you got to City, in the base PS4 version of Return to Arkham, that's the one I can speak to, a lot of times when you would try and grapple boost or do anything like that, there would be some chugging. Sometimes it would even do a little micro pause and there'd be a little bat symbol in the corner that would load in, and then you'd be able to continue going. Sometimes it would take a second, sometimes two. A lot of people didn't care, but it was noticeably a downgrade performance-wise in some ways than the previous versions of the game. That's important to note. That is what I was expecting out of the Nintendo Switch, because let's face it, as somebody who owns a lot of Switch games and enjoys the Nintendo Switch, I can admit that it is not at all the most powerful console out there. In terms of raw power and performance, it's vastly outdated by other tech on the market right now. It's why a lot of people, myself included, are hoping that at some point Nintendo does a follow-up to the Switch, because games like Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are another example even of a first-party game that suffer from performance issues on the Nintendo Switch. It's just a known issue with the console that you don't want to reach above and beyond too far what it can do, because what it will do is cause these games to run like crap. Arkham City is one that I was expecting that out of. It's one that I was expecting to have these problems when you're grapnel boosting and going from place to place in the city, and even when you're in combat, and it really doesn't have too many noticeable problems to me. One cool addition to this version of the game is that it does have the armored Batman suit and Catwoman suit from the Batman Arkham City Armored Edition on the Wii U, and it does run noticeably better than that version of the game. Unfortunately, there wasn't really many additions to these ports that make them anything special. For example, this would have been a really fun opportunity, yes, despite the way that it runs, all right, despite not being quite as visually stunning maybe This would have been an opportunity to do something like add a photo mode into Arkham City. You know, that would have been really cool. But they didn't do that. They didn't really add in anything extra for the most part, other than just these armored suits, which were already on the Wii U version of Arkham City. There's no additional suits or content really for the Asylum port, other than the armored versions. There's nothing really for the City port, and so you're just kind of playing normal old Arkham City. It looks nice and it runs well on the Switch, and you have access to an extra suit. It's cool, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it works fine, and again, for road trips or going anywhere, I think it's done pretty well. Actually, I think Arkham City is probably the best thing in this entire collection. Arkham Knight could easily warrant a video in and of itself, and it might be something I'd take a look at in the future just on its own. It's a mess. It's frustrating to me because I know that there's a lot of people who are like, and I saw this on Reddit, I saw this in different places, they were saying, hey, Arkham Knight's like the one I didn't get to play yet. You know, I didn't have a console at that time, or, oh, I didn't upgrade because I was going through college and I didn't have money, so I never really played Arkham Knight. Whoa, awesome, I got a Switch and now I have a family and I can sit on the couch and play Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight is playable. It is playable, but I wouldn't really want to very much. This is just me. When playing this game, to say that there is chugging and stuttering is an understatement. When you are in the Batmobile especially, it is a nightmare. Now, something I noticed is that indoors, it runs okay. So when you're loading into small confined challenge maps like Cobblepot's Causeway, a race map, the Batmobile works fine. It's competent, it runs okay, it's not really a huge problem. You're able to get from point A to point B and complete the challenge. When you're doing anything regarding Gotham itself, when you are in a challenge map that is using the open world or a portion of it, or you are in the open world itself, doing things like flying or driving the Batmobile is a pain. Also, this version of the game is noticeably darker in some ways, not like the themes of the game, like, well, they added in tons of blood. I mean, the brightness of it. It's just, it looks off. Also, it looks like they removed an entire layer of textures. I was seeing some people say, hey, when I had like a crappy PC back in the day and I put this to the lowest possible settings, this is what it looked like. That's why, like, I'm not even trying to say, like, it should look better on the Switch. I'm trying to say, I don't know if this game necessarily should have been ported to the Nintendo Switch. A lot of people look like they're missing layers of textures on their skin. It's very noticeable on characters like Poison Ivy, and it's extremely noticeable in the diner at the beginning of the game when you are playing as Officer Owens. Literally everybody looks like, maybe I should say, a classic Xbox game. And I love those, but I wanted them to stay on the classic Xbox when it comes to visuals, all right? If you are a small indie game, I have no problem with you sacrificing visuals to get your game running, to get your game out the door for a stylistic purpose or to do performance. Fine, more power to you, all right? One of my favorite games of the last year, again, was RoboCop Rogue City, and it definitely made some sacrifices for its budget in order to make the game that it could. I understand that. This game is not that. This is Batman Arkham Knight. This is a huge release from WB, and unfortunately the way that this port runs, it's frustrating. We've seen in a lot of games with big open worlds that the Nintendo Switch has problems with that. Now, there are games that can absolutely do it, like The Witcher 3. I'm not saying it cannot be done, but you have to make a lot of sacrifices and concessions in order to make it happen. I don't really understand how Arkham Knight made so many of those and it still runs like this, because a lot of these characters look like they're made of plastic. A lot of areas you will notice take 10 seconds of a cutscene to load in all the textures of the area. You know, outside of the diner, for example, it took quite a while to actually load the textures in, and obviously once it loads them in, do I expect them to look exactly as good as the PS4? No. I understand that the Switch was not going for raw power when it came out, and it has not overstayed its welcome, but stayed longer than I think a lot of people thought it would for the power level that it came out at. Does that make sense? It's not something that really ever received many upgrades. The Switch OLED was a marginal upgrade, not much, mainly just screen brightness and handheld mode stuff. But as is, Arkham Knight is one of those games that I could only recommend this version of if this is the only possible way in life that you could play through the game. Like, let's say you are working 2 jobs and you have 4 kids and the only opportunity you have to play games is like 3 hours a week sitting on the couch. I'm not making fun of anybody, I'm being serious here. As somebody who works a lot of hours, I get a lot of people are strapped for time. If you are strapped for time or even money, and the Nintendo Switch is what you have access to, Arkham Knight is playable here. I'm sure you can complete the game, and I'm sure that for people who never got to play it, and this is your opportunity, it would be fun. In fact, the combat works a lot better than I thought it would, and there is a lot of vibrational feedback to the combat that, while is audible and a little annoying at times, actually does do something for immersion when you're playing it in handheld mode. Like, you strike someone, you feel that in the Nintendo Switch in handheld mode. That's neat. There are things here that are actually cool like that. I think that's actually a feature that Switch Up mentioned in their review on their channel, was that the vibrational functions were really strong and interesting. And it's something that after I, had played the game for a while and I looked and saw, well, what do other people think? Am I just being picky? It's something I noticed more as a feature, going back after that and saying, oh yeah, that's cool, that's neat. I forgot to mention that one reason I'm surprised that it's still running this poorly is not because of the internet answer I've seen a lot of people say. I've seen a lot of people go, well, it's Arkham Knight on the Switch. What did you expect? That game was visually impressive. Yeah, it came out in 2015, but it looks like it could have just come out a year or 2 ago. It looks great. I agree with you on that, but here's the problem. They sacrificed all of those good looks. They pulled layers of textures off of these characters very clearly and obviously. They actually sacrificed the destructible environments. They're still here, but when you run into something with the car, it just pops out of existence. I'm sure you've seen that happen a lot of times in the footage here. Your eyes are not deceiving you. Those assets just disappear. There's really no animation of hitting them for the most part. They just are gone. Explosions are simplified. Everything is simplified and stripped down. That's the point I'm trying to get at with this. This game ends up looking worse than Arkham City and running worse than Arkham City. It's why I'm not really sure if this game should have been ported to the Switch, because it actually makes driving gameplay really difficult. I'm not actually just this horrible at the Batmobile, it genuinely is unresponsive and frustrating to actually drive the car, which, in case you don't remember the meme, was a huge portion of Arkham Knight. It was the Batmobile. That had a big impact on and took up a big percentage of the game time. So it's not just a small thing. It's not just like this is something that minorly impacts some racetracks or something. This impacts a lot of the game. And it's not just driving, it's also gliding around the city. Yes, combat works fine. Combat, for the most part, is more responsive than I thought it would be. That deserves some credit, that deserves some praise. But everything around it looks worse and runs worse than anything I've ever seen this game played on, except for the PC version at launch, which was a buggy mess. And it's been 8 years. Yes, the Switch is not powerful, but this is just a mess. So because of that, the way Arkham Knight runs, just constantly chugging and stuttering, especially when you're outdoors, I can only really recommend it if it's the only option you have to play the game. It's just not a good way to play it. I was shocked. Like, I'm not offended by it. When I played it, I didn't think that the graphical downgrade would be that big. Yes, I know that Arkham City and Asylum, came out way earlier, but somehow to me, they look way better. They look more modern on the Nintendo Switch than Arkham Knight does. Arkham Knight looks like an older game than Arkham City on the Nintendo Switch. Let that sink in. I think it probably would have been better to do something like Return to Arkham, but with the original versions of these games. I think it would have been a lot better if there was a way to put Asylum and City in a collection, charge $40 for it, and release that to Nintendo Switch owners. Then it would be to do a $60 game with a version of Arkham Knight that is completable, but I don't know who would really want to unless it's their only option. Do you get what I'm saying? I feel like if more quality could have gone into Arkham Asylum, maybe they could have completely eliminated the stutter. Because when you look at the work done on Arkham City, it's very good. I think it's great, actually, and I think it's a fun way to play the game. I didn't really have any problems with it. Like, I'm genuinely sitting here without really any complaints about Arkham City. I guess the only real complaint I would have is I wish they added more extras into this, whole thing. Like, I would have loved to have seen a photo mode for Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. In fact, I almost forgot, it's been stripped out of Arkham Knight. There's no photo mode in Arkham Knight anymore. It's just not there. Unless it gets patched in at a later date, that's gone. So instead of seeing more features, you actually see textures missing from Arkham Knight. You see an entire feature in photo mode stripped out of the game. Arkham City, something I noticed about the Wii U version back in the day that separated it from the other versions was that it not only had those armored suits, but it also had BAT mode, where you would use this proto shock glove type combat, and it was fun and interesting, and it was different. They don't even give you anything like that here. For $60 US, and I'm sure differing prices in other areas, it's a hard sell, because I really would only find myself ever wanting to play this version of City for the most part, and maybe Asylum if I was on a road trip. Otherwise, I feel like there's a lot of better options out there to play Asylum, and I know there are for Knight. If this is your option, this is what you have access to, then it's worth it. Then it's neat, it's a fun thing, maybe you're on the road all the time, these are your favorite games, cool, it's there for you. Everybody else, I just don't know if I'd recommend paying full price for this. It's just not really up to snuff when it comes to a port. Thank you so much for watching this video, I appreciate you very much. I do want to draw attention very quickly to our website. It's degeneratej.com or enchantedglamour.com, GLAMOR.com, where we sell all kinds of awesome stuff. We've been working on comic book and manga inspired transformative resin coasters. We've been working on handmade jewelry. I want to show you some of these things that are really neat. Christmas is coming up. Maybe you've got a friend, maybe you've got a secret lover, maybe you've got your mom, maybe you've got your friend's mom who is your secret lover. Something I had always wanted when I was younger, so if that's going on for you, I guess let me know in the comments. I'll live vicariously through your accomplishments. But my wife makes all of this stuff. I do help her pick out the images like a kid, with a coloring book. But something that I like a lot that we do is we go to local businesses where they are throwing out comic books and other damaged manga and products like that. A lot of it does not end up recycled, at least where I live in Minnesota. Unfortunately, it ends up in landfills. So what we do is we take that stuff, we make something transformative out of it, something that we, price affordably, and we want to live in your home as a memory of fun things that you like. This is stuff we really love to do, so I hope you'll check that out. Every purchase goes to help support the channel, and it's something my wife absolutely loves doing and I think is really fun. So, hope you'll check that out. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'm interested in your thoughts. Have a fantastic day. And we have also played through Batman Arkham Origins, Spider-Man Miles Morales, we're in the middle of Spider-Man 2. Lots of games over on our Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays. The link is in the description down below. Have a fantastic day, and as always everyone, stay shway.